You're standing in the arena and the opponent across from you is bigger, richer, more connected, more powerful in every measurable dimension. Your instinct screams fight, your pride demands confrontation. And that instinct, that pride, will be the instrument of your complete destruction. This is the trap that has consumed empires, ruined careers, and broken minds throughout history. The belief that strength must be met with strength. The delusion that courage means charging directly into the jaws of superior force. Machiavelli understood what most never will. When the enemy is too strong, direct confrontation is not bravery. It is suicide wearing the mask of honor. Let me show you what they will never teach you in their sanitized leadership seminars and their impotent self-help gospels. The psychological warfare tactics that turn overwhelming disadvantage into invisible supremacy. The methods that make your weakness irrelevant and their strength a liability they cannot escape. This is not about fighting harder. This is about fighting from a dimension they cannot perceive until it is far too late. The conventional approach to facing superior force is a pathology masquerading as virtue. They tell you to work harder, to believe in yourself, to never give up. Beautiful sentiments, catastrophic strategy. Every moment you spend trying to match their strength on their terms is a moment you are playing a game rigged against you from the beginning. The corporate ladder designed so you will climb while they control which rungs break beneath your feet. The social hierarchy structured so your effort feeds their position. The marketplace where their capital determines the rules and your innovation is simply raw material for their acquisition. You have watched this pattern destroy people. The talented employee who challenged the incompetent executive and found themselves systematically isolated, their contributions erased, their reputation dismantled through whisper campaigns they could never directly confront. The small business owner who competed on price against the conglomerate and discovered too late that their opponent could sustain losses longer than they could sustain existence. The activist who shouted truth at institutional power and learned that volume is no match for control of the narrative infrastructure. Each of them believed that righteousness or effort or quality would somehow overcome the mathematics of power disparity. Each of them was crushed not because they were wrong, but because they fought on terrain where being right was irrelevant. The psychological cost of this repeated defeat is not merely lost resources or damaged reputation. It is the slow erosion of your sense of agency itself. Every failed confrontation with superior force teaches your nervous system a lesson. You are powerless. Your subconscious does not distinguish between tactical error and fundamental inadequacy. It simply records the pattern. Challenge strength, experience defeat. Challenge strength, experience defeat. The repetition becomes identity. You begin to preemptively surrender before the battle even begins. Not because you are weak, but because you have been conditioned through direct confrontation to believe that your weakness is definitional rather than contextual. History is a graveyard of those who brought courage to a game that required cunning. The noble houses that met invading armies in open battle when their castles were impregnable. The revolutionaries who announced their intentions and allowed their enemies time to consolidate defenses. The businesses that competed transparently in markets where information asymmetry was the actual product. Their integrity was magnificent. Their destruction was inevitable. Because they confused moral superiority with strategic advantage, and superior force does not care about your principles. It cares only about the terrain where conflict occurs. And if you allow that terrain to be chosen by strength, strength will always prevail. So we begin with the first principle, the foundational reframe that makes everything else possible. Never compete where they are strongest. This sounds obvious until you examine your own behavior and realize how consistently you violate it. The employee who tries to outwork the boss's nephew, not understanding that merit is not the game being played. The entrepreneur who matches the incumbent's advertising spend, burning capital in a war of attrition they cannot win. The individual who argues facts with someone who controls the emotional frame of the conversation. You are bringing ammunition to a battle where the victory condition is not firepower but position. Machiavelli observed that the weak survive not by becoming strong, but by making strength irrelevant to the outcome. This requires a psychological shift so profound that most cannot achieve it because it offends their self-concept. You must reframe retreat not as cowardice, but as tactical repositioning. When the enemy is strongest in open confrontation, you do not meet them there. You withdraw. Not in panic, not in surrender, but with cold intentionality. You are not running from the fight. You are refusing to fight their fight. Every general who survived against superior numbers understood this. Every political operative who toppled entrenched power mastered this. The terrain of battle determines the relevance of strength, and if you cannot win on their terrain, you make their terrain irrelevant. Consider the psychological battlefield, not merely the physical one. Your competitor has more money, but money is only powerful in domains where resources can be directly converted to outcomes. Find the domain where relationships matter more than resources, where trust matters more than scale, where speed matters more than capital. The large corporation cannot pivot quickly. Their strength is their bureaucracy, and bureaucracy is paralysis wearing the costume of process. You do not compete with their advertising budget. You build community in spaces too small for them to notice until it is too large for them to counter. This is not weakness. This is strategic selection of battle space. The enemy's strength always comes with embedded blind spots. The powerful executive is insulated from ground-level information. The dominant company is committed to legacy systems. The popular ideology has assumptions it cannot question without collapsing. Your task is not to attack the strength directly, but to identify what their strength makes impossible for them to see or do. Then you operate in that space. The martial artist does not block the strong punch with equal force. They redirect it, using its momentum as the instrument of the attacker's imbalance. The same principle applies to every domain of conflict. Their strength becomes the reason they cannot perceive your actual strategy. Now we escalate. It is not enough to avoid their strength. You must make them fight your battle on your terms, in domains where their advantages become disadvantages. This is the principle of imposed frameworks. The frame controls the game, and whoever controls the frame controls the outcome, regardless of underlying power dynamics. The powerful always assume the battlefield will favor them. They have won before, so they expect the same conditions to produce the same results. This is their fatal blindness. You do not meet them in open confrontation. You do not accept their proposed terms. Instead, you manufacture a context where their resources cannot be efficiently deployed. A corporation with infinite legal budget means nothing if you shift the battle to public perception. A physically dominant opponent means nothing if you transform the conflict into one of endurance, patience, or social maneuvering. The question is never whether they are stronger. The question is whether you can redefine what strength means in this specific engagement. Consider the psychological architecture of this manipulation. When you control the framework, you control which skills matter and which are irrelevant. A chess grandmaster is helpless in a boxing ring. A decorated general is impotent in bureaucratic trench warfare. The strong have optimized for specific environments. Force them into your domain and watch their expertise evaporate. This requires cold assessment of your genuine advantages, however minor they appear. Perhaps you have time and they need immediate results. Perhaps you understand the social terrain and they are isolated. Perhaps you can tolerate reputational damage and they cannot. Every asymmetry is a potential weapon if you build the battlefield around it. The dark brilliance is that they will fight harder when confused, exhausting themselves against problems they do not understand. You are not trying to overpower them. You are trying to make them waste their power on irrelevant objectives while you advance on what actually matters. This is why Machiavelli emphasized appearing to engage while actually maneuvering. Let them think they are winning the battle you showed them while you win the war they cannot see. Their intelligence works against them because they analyze the wrong game. Their strength works against them because they apply it to the wrong problem. You have not defeated their power. You have made their power defeat itself through misallocation. Write in the comments which law resonates most with your current situation. Your engagement teaches me how to serve you better. Now we move to something more insidious. It is not enough to avoid their strength and control the framework. You must divide their attention while multiplying your presence. This is guerrilla psychology applied to any domain of conflict. The strong rely on concentration of force. They focus overwhelming resources on a single point and crush it. Your counter is to ensure there is never a single point to crush. You become liquid, distributed, impossible to pin down. Every time they commit to confronting you in one place, you have already moved. Every time they prepare a response, you have shifted the nature of the threat. The psychological impact of this strategy is profound. Paranoia is expensive. When they cannot predict where you will act next, they must defend everywhere. This dilutes the very strength you could not confront directly. A superior force spread thin is weaker at every point than an inferior force concentrated. You do not need to be strong everywhere. You only need to be strong at the moment and place of your choosing, while they waste resources guarding against phantom threats. This is not about actual omnipresence. This is about the illusion of it, the psychological weight of unpredictability. Think about what this does to their decision-making. Humans crave patterns. We need to believe we understand our opponents. When you deny them this comfort, when you ensure that every model they build of you is immediately invalidated, you introduce cognitive chaos into their planning. They begin second-guessing. They over-prepare for scenarios that never materialize. They see your hand in events you had nothing to do with. This is the mental warfare of unpredictability. You are not fighting them with strength. You are fighting them with uncertainty, and uncertainty is corrosive to organizational coherence and individual confidence. The practical application requires discipline. You must resist the temptation to establish patterns, even when patterns would be efficient. You must be willing to act in ways that seem random, even chaotic, to deny them the ability to model your behavior. Strike where they are weak, yes, but also strike where it makes no strategic sense, occasionally, just to destroy their confidence in predicting you. Vanish before they can respond. Reappear in a completely different domain. Make them fight shadows while you accomplish concrete objectives in the spaces they have left unguarded because they are chasing you elsewhere. This brings us to a principle that combines patience with opportunism. You must befriend their enemies and inherit their weaknesses. The powerful always create opposition. It is inevitable. Their strength generates resentment, competition, those they have crushed or marginalized. These people are your natural allies, not because you share values, but because you share opposition. Machiavelli understood that the enemy of your enemy is not necessarily your friend, but they are certainly your asset. Every person or faction your enemy has alienated is a potential source of intelligence, resources, or coordinated pressure. The psychology here is about building a network that surrounds your opponent without them recognizing the coordination. You do not need to defeat them alone. You need to ensure that when you move, others move simultaneously from different angles, each pursuing their own grievances but collectively creating an overwhelming multi-front problem. Your enemy cannot prioritize when every direction presents a threat. They cannot concentrate force when force is needed everywhere at once. You have transformed a binary confrontation into a complex web where their strength is divided among many opponents, while you coordinate the timing and pressure points. Intelligence flows through these relationships. Those who have been harmed by your enemy understand their methods, their vulnerabilities, their internal conflicts. You learn where they are weak, not through direct probing, but through the accumulated knowledge of everyone they have ever wronged. This is psychological infiltration through proxy relationships. You never expose yourself. You never give them a clear target. You simply cultivate connections with their opposition network and let information flow to you while you remain in shadow. The dark edge of this tactic is that you can engineer conflicts between your enemy and others, then position yourself as the sympathetic ally to those others. You create their enemies, then befriend them. You manufacture the isolation that makes them vulnerable, then exploit that isolation. This requires patience and subtlety. You cannot appear as the orchestrator. You must seem like the natural friend to those who happen to oppose the same target. But every connection you make is a thread in a web that will eventually strangle their freedom of action, which leads directly to perhaps the most psychologically sophisticated principle. You must appear weak when you are preparing. The strong are always scanning for threats. If you show strength too early, you trigger their defensive systems before you are ready. If you appear weak, broken, irrelevant, they dismiss you. They stop watching. They redirect their attention to threats that appear more immediate. This is your opportunity. While they ignore you, you build. While they underestimate you, you prepare. While they laugh at your apparent weakness, you are constructing the weapon that will destroy them. This requires ego discipline that most people cannot sustain. You must tolerate being underestimated, mocked, dismissed. You must let them think they have already won. Every instinct will scream at you to prove yourself, to show what you are capable of, to demand respect. Resist. That need for validation is what keeps people weak. The truly dangerous feed arrogance to their opponents. They manufacture the perception of vulnerability because perceived vulnerability creates complacency, and complacency creates openings. Think about the psychological misdirection involved. You present a decoy version of yourself, weak and struggling, while your actual self is developing capabilities in complete darkness. They are watching the wrong thing. They are preparing for the wrong threat. When you finally move, it is not from the position they were monitoring, but from a completely unexpected vector, with capabilities they did not know you possessed. The shock value alone disrupts their response. By the time they recalibrate, you have already achieved objectives that would have been impossible if they had taken you seriously from the beginning. This connects to the strategic use of time itself. Time is your weapon, and patience is your shield. The strong always want immediate resolution. They are accustomed to deploying their advantages and watching opponents crumble quickly. Delay frustrates them. Protracted conflict drains them. They have resources, but resources mean nothing if the conflict extends beyond their planning horizon. You, meanwhile, have structured your entire strategy around endurance. You are not trying to win quickly. You are trying to outlast them, to still be standing when their will breaks, when their resources are exhausted, when their attention is demanded elsewhere. The psychological dimension is about who can tolerate uncertainty longer. Strength creates impatience. When you are accustomed to winning, delays feel like losses. When you have power, you want to use it. This impatience is exploitable. You extend timelines. You introduce complications that require more time to resolve. You make every small victory cost more time than they expected. Meanwhile, you are accumulating small advantages. None decisive alone, but compounding over time into an insurmountable position. Desperation becomes their weakness, while patience becomes your strength. As time extends, their stakeholders demand results. Their allies question the investment. Their own psychology shifts from confidence to frustration to doubt. You have not defeated them in battle. You have defeated them through attrition, through the simple fact that you refused to break when they expected you to break. This is the long game. This is how the weak destroy the strong without ever matching their strength. You do not outfight them, you outlast them. You are still there when they are gone, and that is the only victory that matters.